All right, everybody, welcome back. Week 2 of Chasing Winners. Well, I guess technically it's week 3 for us. We did the preseason one, but week 2 of the NFL season, Chasing Winners. We did it last week. By we, I mean me and JP, because sometimes you got to put your teammates on your back. Kyle, I'll start with you. Welcome back.
Well, yeah, I mean, sometimes I guess you got to put your teammates on your back. I had a pretty bad week when it came to my record too, I'm pretty sure. So you guys are carrying the team here, but Giants won last week, so I'm in a pretty good mood coming in.
Well, I carried you in terms of being on the show and helping, but my picks last week were especially not up to par with how they've been in the past. JP, you were the ones that you kept track of the picks. You sent us the results quite quickly. I think that's because you were number one on the pod last week, wasn't it?
I was, and I did put out that screenshot on Thursday night. I was 1-0 that game. I was the hottest gambler in the world. I clicked on the wrong sheet. So in week 1,
saying you're a hotter gambler than Kyle though is like saying like I'm not the fattest person in the room because he's 500 pounds. I'm just 450 pounds.
I was profitable.
But you had a good week.
Slate.
I would say, but you did have a good week. So that's why I was going to say is you don't want to say that you were better than us, especially him. You want to tout that you won last week. That's miles away from what Kyle came from.
I won the week. I went 5-3 with 2-2 on my best bets because the Broncos stink.
Their head coach stinks at least.
You both went. I can't wait for this. You both went 3-5. Ryan, you went 1-3 on your best bets. Kyle 0-3, and then Survivor, Ravens won, 49ers lost. Kyle was eliminated.
It was so funny because I was like thinking about it, and I was like, well, at least Kyle also advanced in Survivor. Like at least that shouldn't be an issue for him. And then you didn't, did you?
No, I really didn't. I tried to beg to get back in, but as Ryan told me, that's not how Survivor works. So.
Well, you can buy your way back in if that's what you want, even though we're not playing for money. But you can buy your way back in to be able to speak on the show. That's what we should do. $10 an episode. Once he loses, he can pay us, and we'll give him part of the Survivor to speak. That's what. There's no winning. It's not like it's a gambling thing. It's not like you can win money on the other end. You're just paying for your right to speak once you lose. I feel like that's fair, right?
So
definitely.
If we all lose, is that just 5 minutes of silence at the end of the podcast?
That's what we should do. We should like play like a song, like something, or what we should do is we should like put like a compilation together of like 1 minute of each of our teams like worst highlights and just play, just like this is our suffering. Like we'll just have a minute of me watching like Lamar have to go shit in an AFC title. What was that? Was that an AFC championship? No, that was a divisional game I think against the Bills. That was the Bills. That was when we were at Buffalo.
And I could just watch Daniel Jones trip for a minute straight.
I was going to say there's not a lot of bad highlights of our teams this week. Everybody won.
Well, maybe not from last week, but if you go over the past couple of years, I'm glad Kyle said it.
On this year.
I would say I'm glad Kyle said it because we'll get into it in a bit. But, I mean, Daniel Jones is like, he goes from like looking to like competent to completely like lost to competent. Like there's no middle ground. It's just, we'll get to him. But he's Eli Manning 2.0. It's like the perfect guy after Eli Manning. He literally is just Eli Manning minus the winning in the Super Bowls. But we'll get there. All right, let's start. We're gonna go through fairly quickly this week. Couple time constraints plus recording on Thursday, so we got Thursday Night Football as well. Got to make sure we get all of that content out as well. Just for the sake of it, I know this won't necessarily be out in time for people to watch for Thursday Night Football, but what do you guys want for Thursday Night Football? Just give me a pick or something you like for tonight.
Kyle,
feel like the over's too easy, but I just feel like.
Honestly, I feel like I like the under.
Yeah. I'll be a square as I usually am. I'll go Chiefs -4.
That's not a square. I'm on the Chiefs. I feel like the Chargers are.
I was going to say Chargers are the square play because that's what I.
Yeah, I feel like the Chargers are much. The Chargers, it just looks like, especially when I don't even know what it's at now, 3.5 or 4, whatever. It's like this just feels like one of those games where maybe the last team to touch it wins, but also just one of those games where it's like kind of always within a field goal or close. It feels too easy for me to take the Chargers, so I'm on the Chiefs, but who knows what's going to happen. All right, let's get to what you said.
I was just going to say that offense was cooking last week, as they always.
Mahomes is like, I'm not I don't want to get into this because I don't want to say he's like disrespected or undervalued or anything, but it's like sometimes when people would like cap these games, like they're like, oh, there's no Tyreek Hill. Oh, it's like something you just forget that he's just the best quarterback in football. I guess Josh Allen could make that argument, but it's like Patrick Mahomes sometimes just wins football games and just puts up, what do you have, 86 touchdowns last week or something like that?
Something like that.
Something like that. All right, let's get into this week. Let's start NFC South, Sunday, 1 o'clock. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 2.5-point favorites at the New Orleans Saints. Over-unders 44. Speaking of squares, this feels like a very square game and a very square pick. Kyle, I'll let you start, even though you guys both are on the same thing here. You know, I'll do it for you guys.
Yeah,
tell me why you're a square.
You could definitely make that shape about this game. I mean, I literally typed it in and sent it to you guys and was just like, this is definitely the most square pick of the week. It bit me last week in Survivor. But I mean, I just feel like the Bucs are the much, much, much better football team here.
Exactly. How do they not win by a field goal?
It's just hard for me to get over that. As we talked about, I'm not big on Jameis Winston. I know he ate a W last week, and that interview was phenomenal. But yeah, I don't think they have what it takes to beat the Bucs this week.
As a Miami fan, is he your most beloved Florida State player? He has to be, right?
Most beloved Florida State player?
Yeah, he has to be.
I mean, he beat us, but
in terms of like picking a Florida State player that you hate the least, I'll phrase it that way since your brain's very weird and we need to spoon feed you some of these things. But he's got to be, right?
Oh yeah, I mean he's a blast. He's so stupid that he's always great and entertaining to watch.
And it's so funny because like when you watch him play football, like obviously he's had his interceptions issues and whatever, but it's like it's almost like it's not like he's making dumb decisions. Like he's a very dumb person, and we've kind of gone over that and seen that in life. But it's like he's not the dumbest quarterback. It's just he makes bad throws more than like bad decisions, which it's always weird because you see those guys where it's like we were talking about somebody in the Discord. I can't remember who it was, and we were just like he's just not a very smart human. But like you watch him, and he was a good player. I can't remember who we were talking about. This was the other day. I'll have to find it. But it's funny because you do have those kind of guys where it's like. They're not like you watch them whether they do interviews or they whatever, just the way they carry themselves. Obviously, he had his crab legs things in college, and he has that famous clip with Harbaugh talking about him in high school and all that stuff. Where it's like some of these guys, it's like you just think like he's not brilliant, but somehow on the football field he is fairly decent, especially with his talent. JP, you are with Kyle, fading the greatest quarterback of all time in Jameis Winston and telling. I'll give him the second greatest quarterback of all time in Tom Brady.
I know it's a square pick. I don't think it's that square of a pick because I don't think the public is going to be overwhelmingly on the Bucs as much.
72% right now.
As much as they normally would be, because the Bucs didn't look great last week, and the Saints looked better than at the end there. They looked good. So I think the Bucs offense is due for a rebound, and they're going to score more than they did last week. So I'm going to take the Bucs.
Don't you think that people are going to come off the Bucs watching last Sunday night? That was Sunday night, right? Yeah, Sunday night's game against Dallas, being like that game hit a point where Todd Bowles was like, Dallas just isn't going to score, so we can just keep like kind of leaving points out there and kicking field goals and like not doing anything stupid, not having to go on it. Like that very quickly turned into like we're just going to take whatever points come our way. So I think a lot of people are going to be like, well, the Bucs could have scored 35 points last week, and I think that a lot of people are going to be on them. It's 72% on the Bucs right now. Line went from 3.5 to 2.5. So this is what we call a chandelier game. I'm gonna hold my nose, close my eyes, take the Saints. It makes no sense. It makes all the sense. I think the one thing that is important is last year the Saints were, I believe, the worst pass rush in the NFL. I know they were like bottom 3 or whatever. Obviously, at that point, can't get much worse. They looked much better last week. it is a different kind of team against the Bucks, but obviously that offensive line is not what it was expected to be. With Ali Marpet, he is did he retire? He's hurt. Ryan Jensen's hurt. They've got a couple guys that are hurt, so it's kind of one of those things. You saw last week a couple times that Dallas was able to get after Brady, able to put some pressure on him. You know, having guys like Micah Parsons, that helps for sure.
Who got after Brady?
Yeah.
The Dallas defense did not get after Brady.
I would say, yeah, having a guy like Micah Parsons obviously helps. But it shows that if you've got that kind of talent, obviously not necessarily a one-person talent, but if you've got kind of that, I think the Cowboys, between the Cowboys and the Saints, I think that the Saints, I would argue they have a better pass rush, even though the Cowboys have the best pass rusher of the two teams and the best overall player in terms of Micah Parsons, especially from what we've seen this year. Maybe not, but I'm just going to pick the Saints, close my eyes, hold my nose, and hope Jameis Winston can do Jameis Winston things. Let's go. All right, Dolphins at my Ravens. Ravens are a 3.5-point favorite. Over-under is 44.5. Kyle, I'll start with you because JP and I took sides. You took a total in this game. I was leaning the over. You went the other way.
Yeah, I mean, I went the under. I'm not a big believer in the Dolphins offense after what we saw this last week. I mean, they did put up 20 on the Pats, but I think we're due for a regression here. Both defenses played very, very well this past weekend. Obviously, the Ravens were playing the Jets. They didn't have much opposition to go against there. But what string quarterback are they on now? They're on their second string quarterback. They were playing Joe Flacco last week, who threw 60 times, which was just 59. But
and apparently they started Joe Flacco instead of Mike White, so they don't have a quarterback controversy. But Joe Flacco will always be better than Mike White. That is a dumb thing to say.
Very true. Joe Flacco has won a Super Bowl. So
if you need a full season, Joe Flacco's not the guy. If you need, like, on a good team, Joe Flacco at this point in his career can still keep you in, like, let's say 4 to 6 games. Like, if you're like, hey, I need to get through kind of what the Cowboys might have to go through with Dak, like, Joe Flacco's still that kind of guy. So I think if it gets to a point where if for some reason Zach Wilson gets re-injured or if something lasts longer and it's got to be long-term, I think they'll go to Mike White. My thought of that was, like, Joe Flacco was like, I signed up here to be a backup. Like, what the fuck is going on here, guys? JP, we're both on sides of this game. Doesn't this feel like a rat line? How are the Ravens a 3.5-point favorite at home? You're telling me on a neutral field these two teams are a pick 'em?
Yeah, because the Dolphins beat the Patriots by about the same amount that the Ravens just beat the Jets, and the Pats are better than the Jets.
Yeah, but isn't that one of those things where it's like the Dolphins came in like ready for war against the Patriots? Like, as bad as the Patriots are and people think they are, like, it's still Dolphins, Patriots, it's still whatever. Like, Ravens, Jets, like, I think the Ravens, I don't want to say they half sleepwalked, but they kind of, like, they didn't even really look good, and that game was never, ever close.
That's what I'm saying, is they didn't look good. So I think they're due for my whole big thing on week 2 of the NFL season is that week 1 means nothing. So I'm going to throw everything I know about the NFL out the window. And so if the Ravens didn't look very good last week, which I agree with, then I think they're going to look great now. So I'm going to take the Ravens minus 3.5. I would not bet minus 3.5. I would certainly take the hook there. But minus 3.5, I guess.
When I first got into betting and all that stuff a while ago, there was a guy I used to follow. He doesn't do content anymore, and he used to have my favorite quote for week 2. He said, if you look at week 1 for your week 2 picks, he said, you've already lost. He said, I spin a wheel, and I go from week 5 to week 12 of last year, and whatever number it lands on, that's just what I use for week 2. Because exactly what you said. People use week 1 as like, oh my God, like that's not how that works. Especially, and obviously that was kind of a joke the way he said it of like picking a random week, but it's like it back and forth. You can't, especially at the beginning of the season. When you get towards the middle of the season and you start watching how teams play, you can see what they can, what their strengths, what their weaknesses are, all of that. Coming into this, as much as I hate to say it, I like the Dolphins. I think they keep it close. I think there's a chance they win the game outright. It feels like one of those matchups that isn't great for the Ravens. They've obviously got some injury issues, and they're all on the injury report. They're all have a chance to play. They all have a chance not to play, from Ronnie Stanley to Marcus Peters to, just guys where it's just that speed of the Dolphins receivers from Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Those are kind of the receivers Ravens usually struggle against. We saw it last year with Jamar Chase. It's that speed kind of over the top, especially when you've got corners like a Marcus Peters who likes to gamble. Is once they're beat, there is no recovery against a Tyreek Hill. I forgot who said it. Somebody said it about Tyreek Hill where it's like his speed is just different. Like it's just like you don't realize how fast he is until he's like already by you. And it's like there is no recovery. The Ravens have a lot of that's how they kind of play defenses. A lot of pressure on the quarterback, whether it's bringing people or not. But then it's having corners play underneath, having safeties over the top. That just doesn't feel like it's going to work against Miami. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope the Ravens come out and win by 2 touchdowns, but just feels like a weird matchup. So K-Mass, he is on the under, right? Should I give you the over? You took the under, so should we be nice and give you the over? Be like, you know what, he's probably going to be wrong, so we'll just give him the over?
No, give me the under.
Under. JP, you're on the Ravens. I am on the Dolphins, as much as I hate it. All right. This is probably the grossest game of the week, but also an interesting game at the same time. The Patriots go to the Steelers. Patriots are 2-point favorites. That over-under is 40. JP, I'll let you start because Kyle and I, we have picked sides in this game. You're the only one on the total. I thought about going the way you did on the total. I mean, 40 just seems way too low, right?
Well, no, it doesn't seem too low.
I was trying to put a ball on a tee for you.
It doesn't seem too low. No, this is another gross play that I'm again saying whatever seems like the play from week 1, I'm doing the opposite. So Patriots sucked in week 1. I think their offense is going to get it back together. The Steelers' defense was pretty good in week 1. I think they're going to regress this week, especially without TJ Watt.
I was going to say, do you think this total is different without TJ Watt? Do you think him being out it's let's say if he plays, it's like 38 or 39?
Yeah, I think it has to be because I think
I agree.
He has minimum 3 sacks in this game. So
I agree.
Yeah, I'm taking the over. I like the Steelers' offense a lot, and that may be just because I started with them in my Madden career, because I like all their weapons. So I think they're still going to be able to put up the 20 points they did last week, and I think the Patriots' offense recovers this week. So I'm taking the over.
Kyle, Steelers are 2-point dogs at home. They're coming off a win against the Bengals. Patriots coming off a bad loss against the Dolphins. Doesn't seem too easy for you?
It should seem too easy, but once again,
that's not a part of Kyle's brain that works. Is the this is too easy part?
No. It never works, and it always bites me. But sometimes it does, and I think that will. I think that this is one of those situations. I mean, I'm talking myself out of it by asking how in the right mind could the Steelers be 2-point dogs in this game, but.
Because they had 5 turnovers last week and only were able to barely scratch out a win. Any team that has 5 turnovers should be winning by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I agree, but they still found a way to scratch out a win away from home against who we thought and who I still think is a fairly good team in the Cincinnati Bengals. So yeah, I'm also looking at week 1 to decide my week 2 games, but this is all going to go terribly. You should all just fade me, but I'm going Steelers +2 here. Maybe
Kyle will turn into the guy that we get thousands and thousands of listeners because he's just losing at a 65% clip, and it's just this kid, I don't know what he's doing, but he's gold. Whatever he is doing, he is gold. He is a must-have for the show. He's a must. People always talk about that. People are we've talked about people we see on Twitter where it's bro, you don't hit anything. It's well, we still follow him because we fade him. I'm not saying that's you, but I'm saying, there are people where it's you can gain a lot of popularity by being bad and just being completely faded.
Yanni the Greek and on Contender Series for you.
Advertisers would be paying all the money just for Kyle because that's the one that brings in the people.
This is one of those, once again, it makes no sense, so that's why I'm going to take it. I'm on the Patriots. I don't think they're very good. I don't think the Steelers are very good. once again, it's just one of those. It makes no sense based on what we saw last week. So I'm almost going to trust Vegas and just take the Patriots here. I mean, if we're betting it, honestly, I mean, at this point, I'm probably betting on money line, but for the sake of the pod, -2. All right.
Also,
go ahead.
I just may have also not forgiven the Patriots for ruining the K-Mass teaser last weekend. We were so close.
That was like one of those games where it was like the second it started, you were like, the Patriots are not covering this game. They're not even going to get close to covering this game.
Yeah.
All right. Bengals at Cowboys. Bengals 7-point favorites, over under 41.5. The Cowboys out Dak Prescott. I was half joking when I said that's a good thing, but the way the Cowboys looked last week, I know they look bad as a team, but Dak looked real bad. Short passes, long passes, they couldn't get anything going. I know CD had one definite bad drop. He might have had two. I know he had one. I thought Noah Brown looked good. I thought that once they finally started using him, I think that he was kind of that. He's like a slightly more raw Michael Gallup. That's how I look at him. Gallup has more of the ability to extend the field, I think, and I think they're going to try and have to use that with him when he comes back, with the absence of Amari Cooper with him, leaving in the offseason. I think Noah Brown's a perfect number 3 for this team because of the way that they can use him. Obviously, between Dak and Cooper Rush, who knows, what the true difference is. I mean, we know the true difference. I don't want to say it like that. But, on a week-to-week basis, who knows how Cooper Rush can perform. Maybe the Cowboys go out and get somebody like a Jimmy G. Call me crazy. I really think that a guy they should be looking at, is, especially for cheap, is a guy like Joe Flacco. Like, come in on a decent defense with a decent offense and just not lose you games. I think that's the kind of guy that they should go with. This week it's Cooper Rush. Kyle, is it because Cooper Rush is playing? Is that why you're on the Cowboys this week?
Is it because Cooper Rush is playing? Honestly,
I mean, what a great name for a quarterback. Cooper, if you're starting like a Madden, like Cooper Rush is a great name for a quarterback.
So, Dak, that was one of the weirdest football games I've ever watched, because I think that Dak is at least a competent quarterback in the NFL. He's been fairly great at times, and he just completely fell apart that night.
Missed a 5-yard crossing route by 6 yards. Tell me how that happens.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it wasn't even like receivers dropping balls or anything. He was just
There was a couple.
But he was just missing badly on a lot of throws.
And that's the issue, is like the comparison here is, it's not an exact comparison, but like when you're looking at like baseball, it's like if a pitcher's all over the strike zone, he's not going to get those borderline calls just because the umpire has been looking everywhere. If a quarterback's throwing the ball all over everywhere, you're going to have receivers that are going to drop balls here and there because it's like the ball's not where they're expecting it to be. So there's just a lot more going through their head when they're trying to catch the ball. And I think that plays into it. So yeah, you're on Dallas +7. I assume you don't think they're going to win this game. I think you just like the points.
Yeah, I like the points. I think it's too wide. I think it's too wide at home. I think they lose the game by about 3-4 probably. They stay in it. I mean, Zeke looked pretty solid last week. If they have to rely on their running backs, I think that's actually a good thing for them. So yeah, +7.
So JP, what I decided I'm going to do is, even though Kyle's out of Survivor, when we get to games like these that potentially could have been in that Survivor mix, I'm going to ask him if this would have been a Survivor team. So, because if it would have been, then I'm not going to use them. So Kyle, would the Bengals have potentially been a Survivor team for you?
Well, no, I'm on Cowboys +7, so I would.
Oh, but there's a middle ground between a team covering a touchdown and winning a game. But all right, nice to know. Maybe I'll use the Bengals in my real life Survivor.
Kyle should come in every week with like 3 potential Survivor teams,
right?
Just to tell you who not to take.
Correct. Okay. And then we can decide after. So, but all right, if he didn't like the Bengals as a Survivor team, I think I'm going to lock him in as one of my. I split 2 picks with 2 other guys in like a real life one, and we were 2-0 going into Monday Night Football. And it was just like, even if we lose the Broncos, like our pool went from like 2,200 people to like 600 people or like something like that. And then it dropped down to like another 150, 200 on. It's just like, you know what? We survived 2 out of 3. I'll take it as a win. JP, me and you in this game, we are both on the over. I mean, Cooper Rush, Joe Burrow. I mean, it's going to be 30 points a team, right?
Well, I'm here to remind everybody Cooper Rush is not that bad. He can actually win a game every now and then.
He looked better than Dak last week. I know it was much different of a defense in terms of more of a prevent and guys being open, but we even talked about it, like his incompletions look better than Dak.
Yes, I wasn't referencing that. I was referencing, the game
I know
last year. But
I
am very what?
I said, yeah, don't.
JP, I forgot who they beat in that game last year.
I don't remember, but
me neither. Probably some shitty team.
I'm very. I'm very happy that everyone has come around to my Dak take because I sent proof in the Discord on Sunday. I've had a take for almost 3 years now that Dak is just not good, and I had a note from October 6th of 2019 where I went through and made a note of every single bad throw Dak made in the game against the Packers. So I'm happy that everyone's on my side now. As far as this game, if the Bengals don't turn the ball over 5 times, they probably scored 35 in the last game.
Even if I would say, this week if they turn the ball over 5 times, they might get 2 touchdowns the other way. Yeah, might get 2 touchdowns the other way.
Yeah, so I think they're due for more points. And then, like you said, Cooper Rush didn't look that bad. He can be competent for a couple of weeks while Dak's hurt. And if they don't get down too early right away, they can script some plays in the first couple drives and get Zeke going and get 10, 20 points. And this over should be fun.
We don't have to really get into it, but one of my big things when we talk about guys like Lamar, like Dak's kind of right in that range a little bit where it's like, would you rather have Lamar or this guy? Obviously, as a Ravens fan, I've always been Lamar over Dak. I don't know how, and I don't want to overreact after just last week, but I don't know how you watched last week. Like, Lamar has literally never had a game that bad, ever. And to be like, oh, well, Lamar's arm sucks. Lamar can't do this, which obviously all that's bullshit. It's like, did you see what Dak, like, that wasn't like a quarterback. That was like a kicker playing quarterback. I mean, it wasn't even like, it was like he had no idea what he was doing. It's just, and I'm with you. I've always been on the train where Dak's a little bit more overhyped and a little bit where he is. I mean, I still think he's a top 15, top 13 maybe quarterback, somewhere in that range. But it's like, people talk about how he's like the 6th, 7th best quarterback in the NFL. It's like,
no, I'd put him in the same range as Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins. But
would you rather have Dak Prescott or Kyler Murray?
It's a good question.
I have no idea. It's probably similar.
The reason I ask that is because it's always Dak or Lamar or Kyler or Lamar. And for me, it's like with those two, it's a very easy decision. I'd rather have Lamar. When you get to the other guys, it's different. But that's why I think the two of them are probably fairly similar, Dak and Kyler.
Yeah, I'd agree.
All right. You kind of just did an unintentional segue, JP, but I'll take it. You brought up Derek Carr. I brought up Kyler Murray. Look at that. The Cardinals go to the Raiders. Raiders 5.5 point favorites, over under 51.5. I'll go first because I'm the only one on the side here. It's Call of Duty week, so I'm fading Kyler Murray, and I'm taking the Las Vegas Raiders. Part of that is because the way that my fantasy team was drafted is I've changed my name to the Raiders because I have 4/5 of their offense, so this is more of a little bit of a hopeful pick. I do like the over. That was the side I was going to lean if I was going to be on the total. I just think this is one of those games that the Raiders come out, and even if they're not as good as people think they could be this year, this just feels like one of those games they come out, win by a touchdown, even if it is close to that 5.5. It also just feels weird because it's like, yeah, the Cardinals got blown out by the Chiefs, but it's the Chiefs. So it's like, how much does that line really change if I don't want to say the Raiders were in the game last week because they were in the game at the end, but it like kind of wasn't really close till the end. And they did, they were always down. I think it was like 2 scores, whether it was 10 or 12 or whatever it was. It's just, it feels weird. Like this line feels weird. Like this feels like this should be like 4.5. The fact that it's 5.5 tells me to take the Raiders. Like I said, I like the over if I'm looking at a total. You two hooligans are both on the over, which a little swayed me away from the over, but tell me why this game goes over. Let's see if the two of you can get this right and not both of you talk at the same time.
Kyle, you can start.
Well, that's
All right.
cheating.
I was waiting for JP to speak there. So it's simple for me. I mean, you have two of my favorite over teams in the league. I mean, they both didn't score what they were capable of last week. I mean, they were both playing great football teams. I mean, the Chargers and the Chiefs, we're going to see that game tonight. It's going to be a phenomenal football game. So can't wait for that one. Can't wait for this one either because there's going to be a ton of points on the board. So the over was just a simple one for me reading the names of the teams playing. Hopefully it goes that way, but we'll see.
And hopefully Josh Jacobs gets more than 11 touches if he's averaging 6.5 yards a touch. But
yeah, we talked about this in the Discord earlier this week. It's ridiculous. It is.
It's like it's either got to be in his contract or it's like a rule like written on like the Raiders wall of like Josh Jacobs shall not have more than 15 touches in a game.
If he has more than 15 touches in a game, it's an easy win.
When we're looking back at like Alabama running backs, like obviously Derrick Henry's the first one that you think of, and when you go back a little bit, you got guys like Mark Ingram, but it's like Josh Jacobs has to be number 2 behind Derrick Henry, right? Maybe Najee. I guess Najee's now in that conversation. But it's like just in terms of like people forget how good Josh Jacobs was in college. And these Alabama running backs, they catch balls all the time in college, and then they get to the NFL. It's like, well, he's 6'5", 240 pounds. He can't catch balls. It's like, well, let's throw him a fucking ball and see what happens. Like last week when he had 1 catch for 16 yards, and like, well, let's not do this anymore.
Yeah,
JP?
they
ahead,
just
Kyle.
view I was just going to say, they specifically view these guys as power backs, which obviously Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, these builds you would, but
Najee's finally getting, in the NFL, finally one of the Bama running backs getting the ball thrown to him. But we've kind of gone off topic. JP, anything else to add for this over? Or
I mean, the Cardinals' offense wasn't completely in gear last week. They should be better this week. The Raiders' offense was certainly not in gear. I'm worried that people may have lied to me about Derek Carr. And there was a stat, I think it was like since John Gruden got fired or resigned or whatever, it's 17 touchdowns and 20 interceptions from the quarterback that doesn't throw interceptions. So I'm a little worried that Derek Carr might be an interception guy. So
just a little worried.
I'm a little worried. So I think he's going to get it back this week. Don't love either side other than the Call of Duty double XP thing. But the over, these two teams should put up 50 points.
All right, let's we weren't planning on talking about this, so let's just quickly, we're not even going to necessarily talk about it. I just wanted, if you had to take a gut feel pick from the Sunday night game, the Packers 10-point favorites at home against the Bears, over under 41.5. Kyle, just a gut feel, Packers 10-point favorites, 41.5 is the total. What's your gut feel in that game?
Aaron Rodgers recovery game against his rivals, Green Bay covers.
JP?
Last year, week 1, Packers got blown up by 35. Next week, they played an NFC North team, and they beat them by 18 at home. Packers are 9.5, 10-point favorites.
I'm glad
this week.
I'll say I went to Kyle first because this is one of the first. It's like one of the first. I don't want to say like conversations, but like one of the first like big conversations and gambling lessons that I had to teach Kyle was going back to an infamous Sunday night game between the Packers and the Bears. Where granted the Bears were a better team then, but you can't pick Mitch Trubisky over Aaron Rodgers. You just can't. And in a situation like this, you just can't pick Justin Fields over Aaron Rodgers, especially when Rodgers is coming off a bad week like last week. It's got to be the Packers. It's got to be Aaron Rodgers. It almost is such a weird line that it's like I feel like it should be like 8, which I guess there's not a huge difference between like 8 and 10, but I also kind of like the over there a little bit, but that we'll figure out come Sunday night. All right, we've got 2 Monday night games this week. First one, the Tennessee Titans at the Buffalo Bills. The Titans are 10-point dogs. That over-under is 48. I'll go first because I'm the only one on the total. I like the over. I love the over. When JP said it was 52 at first, I thought it was 52, and I loved it at 52. So 48, I love it even more. The Titans are one of those teams that, especially recently with Vrabel, outside of when they, was it last year they were the 1 seed, 2 years ago, whatever it was last year, right? They were the 1 seed.
That sounds right.
Right, whatever it was. They're always not as bad as you think they are, and they're always not as good as you think they are. So this is like a perfect spot for them to keep it somewhat close, kind of in that 10-point range. If I were to lean aside, I'm leaning the Titans, but I just think they'll be able to put up some points. The Bills, I think, can score at will, especially against the Titans secondary that, I think I could put Kyle at tight end, and I think I could throw JP at a halfback, and I think we could still get 14 points against tight end Titans. So that's kind of where I'm looking at this game, is that I think the Titans have a chance to cover if they can score, but I don't see how Buffalo doesn't score, so that's why I'm taking the over. You guys are on opposite sides. For once, Kyle is not on the square side. JP, the slightly square side of the Bills at 10-point favorites. What's the reasoning here?
From my square side?
Yeah. Mr. Square.
The reasoning is pretty simple.
Kyle's on the other side.
There is that, but this is like the only game this week that I actually kind of went against my week 1 thing. But it's one of the games where if I bet on the Titans and they lose by 50, I'm gonna hate myself. And if I bet on the Bills and it's a close game, I'm not going to hate myself. So I'm going to take the Bills.
Has there ever been a trade?
No, there hasn't.
More like where both teams would still be like, let's do that again, when Diggs left the Vikings to go to the Bills?
I don't think there has. I mean, would the Bills want Justin Jefferson? Probably. But Diggs has also been kind of that leader in the locker room that they needed for those young receivers. And we needed him out and got a number 1 receiver in trade for him. So it worked out very well for both teams. I shudder to think what he's going to demand or when we have to extend Jefferson. But
it was so weird, though, because Diggs wasn't like – he's obviously not the guy he is in the Buffalo locker room, but he wasn't like this guy's a cancer, we have to get him out. It was more just his relationship with Zimmer. And it's like, well, now that Zimmer's gone, it's like we could have probably made that work. Yeah, but I think that all stems from the fact that Cousins and Zimmer never really got along. So Diggs was kind of like, the two of you got to fucking figure it out because you guys are costing me a lot.
Well, but then he could have picked a side pretty easily there.
But how about even like when you talk about like a guy like
both of them?
No, I know, but you can, because it's like you two have to figure this shit out. Like you guys are both in the wrong somehow. Because even when we talk about Thielen, and I know a lot of people, the quote he had when you're talking about Zimmer. Saying that, we have to be able to throw the ball and not just run the ball. And that was obviously, somewhat of a shot at Zimmer being like, we have to be able to throw the ball. It was also a shot at Cousins being like, you got to fucking hit these open throws. So it's like, it's not like Diggs was the only one saying shit. That's all I'm going to say.
No, it wasn't. But he was, Thielen.
He's more vocal. It's how he is.
Thielen wasn't the guy that's going to force his way out and demand a trade. Thielen's going to wait it out. Diggs is not.
Thielen also has half already gotten paid. Diggs hadn't had that huge money, huge contract.
Thielen is the Minnesota kid that will never leave.
Kyle, you're on the other side of this game.
Yeah, I had the same feeling that you expressed a bit. I feel like the Titans are probably not going to win this game, but they're going to be able to keep it close enough. I'm on Titans plus 10 here. I think last week was an absolute calamity for them. It was hilarious. I was obviously cheering for the Giants on the Giants side.
The Giants shouldn't have won that game.
No, they shouldn't have won that game at all. I'm happy we did, but we looked terrible for most of that game and hit 2 chunk plays and won. So
well, no, Kadarius Toney looked good. He just didn't play.
Yeah.
the guys that played well outside of Saquon Barkley just didn't play. That's just how it worked apparently.
Yeah.
It's 2022 and the Giants are throwing the ball to Richie James. Fucking James. I'm not even going to get mad at Sterling Shepard because Sterling Shepard's just been doing this forever. He's not very good, but he always has these. I'm not going to get mad at him. Richie fucking James. But we'll get to that later when I get to my best bets. All right. Minnesota at Philadelphia. We just talked about the Vikings. Speaking of these huge receiver trades, the biggest trade in the offseason, I guess you could argue, was Devontae to the Raiders. But I think I guess that probably is the most important. but 1A and 1B, A.J. Brown going to the Eagles. Not that Devonta Smith's not a number one or isn't going to be a number one. This is the perfect guy that Jalen Hurts needed at this point in his career because A.J. Brown, an absolute freak. He's the height, the weight, the speed, all of that. He's just one of those guys that it's like, and I said this about Julio 2 years ago or last year with Lamar, was like, if you're truly trying to evaluate a guy like Lamar, you're trying to truly evaluate a guy like Jalen Hurts or even like a Daniel Jones or these kind of guys, give him one of these guys. Be like, we're going to pay for 1 or 2 years for this guy. We're going to give it to him and see, because if you can't succeed with a guy like this, then you're just not going to succeed. Obviously, Bateman's kind of turned into that for the Ravens in terms of, being that, and Andrews that go up and get him. So them not getting Julio wasn't the biggest thing. But A.J. Brown, I mean, after 1 week, it seems like he's massively beneficial to Jalen Hurts, as he would be to almost any quarterback. It makes me feel great that JP and I are on the same side, which makes Kyle on the other side. Kyle, is this a weird line for you? Is this your JP's friend, so you want to be nice? Is this how you end up on the Vikings?
It was a weird line to me. I mean, you said it. This is the one time where I actually looked at something and said, "Oh, this is really weird. I have to go on the other side." But
Did you forget that it was Kirk Cousins playing a primetime game?
I did.
He's not that bad anymore.
I did somewhat forget that it was Kirk Cousins playing a primetime game. When I looked at the list of games, I just looked at them straight up and did not look at what time they were at. But yeah, so it
is a little bit overblown, that narrative. But he has gotten better. But not that bad is still not that good.
Okay, so if I was gonna lean a total here, I would probably lean the over, just because both of these teams could score a ton of points on each other. The Eagles let up a ton of points last week. You know what? I just talked myself into it. I'm switching my pick to the over.
See, that's what good friends do. They help their friends pick better picks. Now the Vikings, I'm sure, are going to win after all that. But all right, so we'll put you down for the over. JP, we're both on Philly. I'll go through my reasoning first, and then you, as a Vikings fan, can go through yours after. Philly did let up a lot of points last week. That game was also, once again, I can't say it wasn't as close as it looked, because it was close at the end, but it wasn't. It really was never. That game was way closer than it should have been. I think the main thing here for me is when you look at last week, the Packers played this zone defense where, I mean, there was points when to say there was nobody within 25 yards of Justin Jefferson is an understatement. And it's like, if you're going to cover one fucking guy, like if you're going to be like, hey, well, I'm going to leave my zone open to make sure that this guy's fucking covered, Jefferson's the guy. Clearly that didn't happen last week. He's still, I'm not going to say that the Eagles are going to shut him down, because, a guy like Justin Jefferson, you're never planning on shutting down. It's one of those where if he has 6 catches for 65 yards and doesn't score, you're like, all right, that's a win. Like that's a successful week. Philly plays more of a man. They're much better than Green Bay on the defensive line and the offensive line. So I think they'll be better in the trenches. We saw at points last week the Packers able to get a little bit of pressure on Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is still one of those guys that the little bit of pressure makes him panic a little bit, and he obviously will sometimes step in the pocket and make these crazy throws, or sometimes he'll run for his life and throw it 20 yards out of bounds and kill a play 3-4 seconds before it should be over. I just think Philly is able to beat them in the trenches. I think the fact they play a man versus the zone that Green Bay played last week is a big difference. I don't see how the Vikings stop A.J. Brown. And if they do, I think Devonta Smith has a huge game. I just think it's one of those games where the Eagles are able to put up points. The Vikings are a much different team on the road versus at home. New head coach, first road game. Eagles back home. Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, give me the Eagles. JP, you're on the same side as me as a Vikings fan, but was that kind of the reasoning, or is there anything that I missed?
First of all, I'd like to say biggest, most important trade did involve Eagles receiver, but it was Jalen Reagor coming over here. I'm very disappointed that you didn't say that.
Oh, we got primetime Jalen Reagor next week.
Second of all, You guys are talking about primetime Kirk Cousins, and you're betting on the Chiefs in primetime this week. That's on you.
And Monday night's much more primetime than Thursday.
Thursday night. For this game, this is going to be a regression for the Vikings. As someone who was on Eagles -4 last week, I know they're going to cover this week. If the Vikings start out on their first drive and run the ball effectively, go march down the field and score a touchdown, then I'll start rethinking whether the Vikings can win this game. Until then, I don't see how they do that. I mean, if A.J. Brown was Christian Watson last week, the Packers would have scored on the first play of their game, and we would have lost by 20. So
that game's a lot different if he catches that ball.
I know. That's why I'm saying that. But he burned Patrick Peterson multiple times. Patrick Peterson is a traffic cone. I don't know why we're paying him other than his veteran presence, but he's just still out there. If that's who covers A.J. Brown, he's going to go for 300 receiving yards.
If they find out that A.J. Brown's one-on-one with Patrick Peterson, like if that's what the plan is before the game, I'm going to bet A.J. Brown over like 160 yards.
It would be justified. It might be -120.
All right,
also,
go ahead.
I just checked the times. Why are these games on Monday night an hour and 15 minutes apart?
It's so dumb.
It's because of the way that they were doing it where, one, it was the TV contracts, but also with the West Coast, something about how they can only have games. I know their games aren't on the West Coast, but it's how they didn't want to start them at some point, or I don't know. It's like, we fucking run on East Coast time.
They both have ESPN games.
So it's ESPN and ABC.
Yeah, ABC. Yeah.
So then that's dumb.
Yeah, it
should be 5:30, well, Central, so 6:30.
So that's part of the new ESPN deal. With obviously they had the extra playoff game last year, but with ABC, I think they get 3 or 4 games a year. So the way it works out is like they just that I think that it's like a week like this. This might be the only week with 2 Monday night games, but there was 1 or 2 weeks where it's like we had to have an ESPN and an ABC at the same time. And when you look at ratings, like that second Monday night game never really did great, starting in at 10:30 or whatever.
Yeah.
I think you should just start one in the afternoon. I think you should start one at 4:30 and start one at 8.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate that. But
yeah,
don't they do Monday on ABC too? Like the regular.
No, they didn't used to.
Sometimes they simulcast.
Sometimes last week together.
That they have it on 3 channels.
It's whatever. All right, let's go through these best bets. We're trying to keep this short. JP's got softball. Kyle and I got some work to attend to, but obviously we're slaves to the content, so we had to get you guys this. Kyle, I'll come back to you in a second because I need you to think, because me and you have best bets on opposite sides, so we've got to do some sort of a bet of not a shoey, but something similar to that. So I'll give you like
please
minutes.
Be a shoey.
But then we're copying others. But we can. I guess if we acknowledge we're copying somebody else, is that okay?
Can you shoey something stronger than a beer? Can you shoey an IPA?
No.
Can you shoey a Steel Reserve?
No.
I was gonna say yes. So I'll say I'll shoey a mixed drink if that's what you want me to shoey. I'll say I'll do whatever. All right, let's do it
this weekend.
No, I think that's good. We can do a shoey for next week.
Shoey bet?
Yeah.
All right.
We'll just have to credit that we're taking it from the Dog or Pass guys, but we're gonna steal the shoey bet, huh?
They don't own shoeys.
They started.
They kind of do.
They started it.
All right, so I'll just run through these best bets. Yeah, I'll just run through these best bets. We don't really need to go over them, especially because some of them we have reasoning and some we don't. But Kyle, I'll go through yours. Giants money line, Falcons Raiders over 46.5, Pittsburgh +2, and Cardinals Raiders over 51.5. I'll just ask you if you had to pick one of them, what's your favorite of those bets?
The Rams Falcons over.
JP, you are on the Bucks money line over 34.5 as that parlay. I think you said paid +110, something like that, right on even money.
I just did a single game parlay on DK. I can't use it, but since that's what we use, then I just threw those in there because I don't want to tease across 0. That's what we always say. Parlay the money line with better lineup.
You're learning. I should keep behind me. There should be like like growing up. No, the exact opposite. I say like growing. Well, not the exact opposite, but like growing up, like in classes and stuff when it was like you put like you had a good job. You put a gold sticker. Like that's what I should do. Is like JP like learned like gambling lesson number 1. Don't tease across 0.
Well, I will put a gold sticker right here.
Gold sticker right there. I'll even sign it. I'll sign it. Mr. Baumohl. 915 approves the gold sticker. All right, so there's that same game parlay. You're on the Rams -10 as a best bet, and then a teaser Cardinals +11.5 over 45.5, and then Green Bay -9.5 on that Sunday night game. If you had to pick one, what's the favorite?
It's the Packers. It doesn't matter. It's the Packers.
My best bets as of now, I'm on the Panthers. Kyle was on the Giants. Kind of went over that. If Cleveland doesn't hit a crazy long field goal last week, this line's much different. If the Titans don't blow a crazy lead, this line's much different. That's why I'm on the Panthers. The Tennessee and Buffalo over. Philly is a lock for me, and then Dallas and Cincy over 41.5. I'm trying to decide between that and the Tennessee and Buffalo over. Those are my 2 favorite best bets. Probably that Tennessee Buffalo over, but they're both in top contention for the best bet of the best bets. We're not going to do fantasy and DFS this week, like I said, just because we're trying to keep it short, so we can get these other things taken care of. We are still in Survivor. By we, I mean me and JP. Not much to talk about this week, just because we're both going to take the Rams. And here's the good news, JP, is that obviously the way Survivor works is that if we both lose, we're both back in it next week.
Well, that's good. That's good, so that we.
If everyone loses in a week, then there's no you go back to the last week because there's no winner.
Is that Kyle? Is he talking?
Yeah. All you had to do was survive 1 week, and he couldn't do it. So just to get ahead of it, the way that it does work, though, is so if they both lose, not that we're playing for anything, but pride, which is a lot more than, especially between the 3 of us, the way that it will work if they lose is JP and I would both be back still in it, but the Rams would already have been a used team, so you can't use them again. So that's how that would work. It does scare me a little bit, but that would be my Survivor pick. That is going to be my real life Survivor pick, in addition to one other. Yeah, I think that pretty much does it for week 2. Hopefully we can, as a podcast, as a YouTube video, we can go positive this week. I'll settle for what I'll call positive minus Kyle. So as long as JP and I go positive, or maybe here's what I'm thinking is that Kyle's going to go like 7-2.
That could happen.
I think there's going to be a chance. There's going to be a time when either now or later in the year, you're going to have like 2 or 3 weeks in a row where you're going to put together like a 22-7 like streak. And the only question is going to be like, are you going to be already way too far out of it, or are you going to do it early enough that JP and I are going to slowly be clawing our ways back to? But that's kind of how Kyle works, especially with his bets. It's an O. He's the big cat. He's the 0-7, and then he's the 2-0. It's like I forgot about the 0-7. I'm 2-0. Like we're on to this week. We're on to this. So
it actually happened at the end of the last week we did in the last season. I did very well. Yeah, because I started doing well, and I was going to come back and beat both of you. So
you weren't going to beat me, but you were going to be
only 7 games back of you.
I wasn't making up 7 games.
And do we want to put the best bets in there too?
Let's not do that.
Okay. Week 2. Thank you guys for joining us. Make sure you follow all of us on Twitter. JP's Viking Fan JP. Kyle K Mastoloni. I'm Gambling Tips DFS. Or Gambling DFS Tips. I've always thought about changing that name, but it's just like it's too much work, and it's whatever. So that's what I'm stuck with. But we'll put those on the screen. You can give us a follow. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube video. It's only in YouTube form. I'm not putting it out in podcast form right now. If people prefer to be out in podcast form and want us to pay to have it hosted on a podcast server, we can do that. But I think a lot of people watch on YouTube, so we'll keep it on YouTube for now. Not if we went to a podcast, it would still be on YouTube. So not to say it wouldn't be on both. But hit that subscribe, hit that like button, follow us on Twitter. Join our Discord, and let's make some money. Let's have a good week, guys. Deuces.